Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director of Event Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. With me is Amy Madonia, and she is the Executive Director of Global E-Commerce at the Estee Lauder Companies. Welcome, Amy. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing this. I have to say, we first connected because of an article you wrote. I was just like, loved the article. It was on what did I lose you already?
Yes, that was the title. Yes.
It was so timely at the time because I was preparing for putting together my open for our TV and video summit that we do every fall in Montauk. And I was reading it and I'm like, oh my God, this is so smart and fun. And just, as I told you, I stole from you too in the open. So I really appreciate that.
Good. No, I'm glad I could help. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I did. I loved it. I read the whole thing through. I actually cut and pasted. Like, seriously, it's on my computer now. So it was something that I took from. And I have to say, because I know when I reached out to you on LinkedIn and asked you permission to sort of steal from you, and you were like, you know, flattery is obviously the best, or not flattery, copying or whatever is the best. What's the expression? Imitation is the best.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yes, and it was totally, that was my intent at that time. So I kind of want to turn it on you. And has there been a time recently where you've maybe seen something and wanted to imitate or steal from a little bit and use that in an aspect, whether it be in your personal life or in professional life, that's, you know, maybe the past 6 months or year or so?
You know, there was an ad that I saw, and actually a TV ad, and I think it was on streaming, so that I thought was very clever. And I haven't figured out how to steal this combination of genius that I saw in the ad. It was for the nose strips that you wear that help you breathe.
Yeah.
And in the ad, they show people in different settings. And the person says, as a narrative, I strip, you know, and you fill in the blank in the location.
Yep, I've seen it.
I strip at the airport. I strip in my bedroom. I strip at the doctor's office. And they show people wearing the, so I haven't figured out how to use this, but the genius I thought there was finding something that's funny and breaks through the clutter and also increases usage occasions for the product. Because you may only think of like using it when you're doing an athletic activity or using it when you're sleeping and when you specifically really need, or when you're sick and you really need the help to open your airways. But the ad points out a whole other set of usage occasions, which from a marketing perspective is really smart because you're broadening your audience, the usage occasions, and just your sales overall by doing something like that. So
but it's also, remember, it's memorable. You know, like, I mean,
yes.
I know I've seen this ad. You say, once you said you strip, or, you know, I strip. Right. I know exactly what ad you're talking about. So
yes, I think that one's really brilliant. I haven't figured out how to imitate it in any way, but I'm sure I will. Something having to do with breaking through the clutter and also increasing usage.
Yeah. No, well, I get that. And I mean, obviously, when you talk about the e-com, of course, is really what your main passion is in terms of work. And yes. I read on your, I always say it to everyone, I always snoop beforehand, and I read on your LinkedIn page that, I'm going to read your quote. I love talking about digital and all things e-commerce. So if you're interested in chatting or networking, please reach out. All right, so I want to take that. I want to talk about, like, you listed your skills with that. And I want to talk about some of your skills, but my take on it. So it's more about you as opposed to the work. So let me first, one of your skills is digital transformation. So I want to ask you, is there a time in your life or your career that you really experienced a transformation and that you then got to another point, whether it be in your career or in your personal life?
Yeah, no, there's actually several points in my career where I've been the person leading the charge on digital transformation. And luckily in both cases, I didn't realize that I was doing that. Otherwise, it probably would have been scary and overwhelming in a number of ways. But the first time was when I had inherited a business to run an e-commerce business, and it was of the stable of brands that the company owned, it was the least glamorous, shall we say, and it had been in double-digit declines for many years prior to me taking it over. And so there was a general sense of I guess, acceptance on that downward trajectory with the business, and that it would always be declining. It was also a catalog business that was getting into, selling online. This was the very first business I ran, so this was a very long time ago. And I had to convince everyone that things like email and paid search were really important and could really drive the business. This was very early days. And I had to convince that the harder part from a transformation perspective was convincing everyone that there was a potential upside for this business that had been in double-digit declines for as long as anyone could remember. So that was a digital transformation that I managed to achieve just through transparency and communication and kind of rallying the troops behind the concept of, hey, look, we can really make this business grow if we put our minds to it. And so that was a business that I took from, I think it's like -8 to +3 in 21 months. And it was a big business, a very profitable business. So it had a very big impact on the company. The other digital transformation that I spearheaded kind of unwittingly, like I said, which was probably good because I would have scared myself, was in 2009, I was the first e-commerce hire for Wrangler jeans. And I was the first person that took them from a purely marketing site to an e-commerce transactional site. So I helped them launch their very first e-commerce site in 2009. And if you can remember back to 2009, these were the days where there was a lot of fear about cannibalization and channel conflict. And so for brands like Wrangler, who were primarily wholesalers and manufacturers selling to the retail channel, the idea and concept of going direct to consumer and having a formidable e-commerce business was very scary. So I even had one of the Wrangler sales guys say to me, "You're going to take the dinner off our table. You're going to take the food out of our children's mouths." The fear was that real. Wow. And so again, communication was super important in this situation as well, because we had to go about it in a very collaborative and transparent way and make some concessions, frankly, to make the organization comfortable. And one of the things that we did, which was kind of bizarre and unheard of these days, but we agreed that the e-com site would be last to market on newness. So all of the retail channel would get the new styles first, and then e-commerce would be the very last to show the newness. Totally counterintuitive, not what folks do today, obviously. But at the time, that gave the sales team and the leadership the comfort level that we weren't going to blow up the business.
It's
so that was good.
Oh, sorry, but no, but just
that was one of the big concessions.
Yeah, like
yeah.
steps.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And it's funny when you talk about it today, especially, put yourself in a pandemic. Look at all of these brands who, especially CPG brands who all of a sudden went from no e-com to having to embrace e-com because of COVID and, no one could go out and that kind of thing. So it was almost, what you did, but they had to do it in such a hyper accelerated way. Imagine Wrangler people having to do it that quickly at that time,
Yes, it was a very different environment, and, going about it in a way that we did, which was very collaborative, very, open as far as communication goes. And it was probably the only way we could do it. The CEO was in favor of e-commerce, but a lot of Wrangler leadership and the Wrangler sales team was fearful about what it would mean. Yeah. So going about it that way really built trust and respect. And once the business started going and the wholesale channel didn't see their business kind of collapse overnight, then we had more freedom and more leeway to do more things online than we could at the very beginning at launch.
Yeah. And that must have been a really big lesson learned for you in the sense of, okay, when you really want that transformative, whatever it may be, it's to be willing to take it in a slower way, like to sort of take those steps, earn its value, get people's trust, and then you can move forward from that, because that can really be applied, I'm sure, across the board as you advance your career and advance your positions with different.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that's hard for people that are ambitious and aggressive and direct, like me. Naturally, I'm aggressive, I'm ambitious, I'm direct, because you have to kind of take the edge off and be a little softer in your approach and be very considerate and empathetic of the players that are at the table with you. And really, most importantly, kind of take them along the journey versus kind of force them on a journey you might want to go on by yourself.
Yep.
And that that was an important lesson to learn that early on in my career, because as organizations, groups of people tend to work that way, no matter what the topic is or what you're trying to achieve, just to varying degrees in terms of the collaborative and the communication piece of it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, as you said, not everyone's going to jump in as fast as you may. And so being smart enough to know, okay, this is the way we need to do it, and work more collaboratively. But at the same point, have your focus, so you're still working towards your end. It's just a matter of taking it a little slower.
Yes, and taking everyone along with you and knowing, who has to weigh in on what decisions, which is a little bit of the organizational political navigation that you can do once you've been in a brand for a little while.
Yeah. Well, you say that you are that person who has the drive and who wants to keep moving forward. Now, talk about it. Like when you first graduated, I know you went to Cornell University, and was that drive there? What, because you started, you mentioned Wrangler. Before that, I think that was your first position or company, at least from your LinkedIn page. And then you went to other brands, and you even you started your own marketing consulting, and now where you are at Estee Lauder. So talk about that, your path. Like, was that drive there? Did you learn it as you moved forward? And what brought you, the path that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I wish I could say that when I graduated from Cornell, I had a path that I knew. I was certainly, driven, wanted to be at the top of my game, whatever that game was. I just didn't know what that game was going to be, which was a really tough and frustrating place to be, because, I wasn't one of those people that grew up and out of the womb said, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be, whatever. So I actually went to Cornell on a compromise with my parents, because they had an interior design program and I wanted to go to art school. And my mom had said, there's absolutely no way we're paying for you to be a starving artist.
Wow.
So Cornell was actually a compromise, believe it or not. And so, I know, bizarre, right? And so I was in the interior design program for 2 years. And then at the beginning of my junior year, my heart wasn't in it. And I really felt like big decisions that I was making were being made in the absence of any data or reasonable rationale. In other words, as an interior designer, I might say the couch would be pink. Well, what was driving that decision? Was I making people's lives more awesome by choosing pink versus blue or beige? No, and I had no rationale or any data to hang my head on. So I got a little frustrated, and even though I was at, it was a weeder class, kind of like, medical school. So they started with like 40, and then they only graduated like 12. Well, I was 13. So I was like the last one to drop before they graduated the class. And I switched to something within the major that was more business oriented and a little more practical, which is not a common major, but it's called facilities management and planning. So basically, the program trains you to run buildings and campuses and very large buildings. So my first job.
What directed you there?
Yeah, it was within the same major, and it was a little more businessy, and I could use my existing credits in interior design.
Okay, so it just kind of, it was more, it fit.
It was more practical, and it appealed to me because I didn't take traditional business classes to that point. My first job out of undergrad was in that function, in that area of expertise. So I had a career prior to business school that was very different post business school. my pre-business school, pre-MBA career was in the architecture and engineering fields. So I worked for an architecture firm doing strategic facilities consulting, and I would work for companies with tons of buildings, Janssen Pharmaceutical, AT&T, Ortho McNeil, all of these guys since purchased by somebody else, except AT&T. But basically advising them on what to do with all their various buildings and space and departmental adjacencies and things like that. And then I wound up working for an engineering firm and basically kind of weaseling my way into marketing.
Was that intent? Like, was that what how did you suddenly find marketing and then say, well, this is, you say weaseling your way in?
Yeah.
Obviously you wanted to get there. What prompted that?
Yeah, so I was essentially a database person, and I was building a marketing database, and I happened to be within the marketing department. And so I could see everything they were working on, and they were working on proposals that would go to engineering firms to build buildings as an electrical contracting business, one of the ones that are actually top in the world and do world's tallest buildings kind of stuff. I saw everything they were doing, and I really wanted to take part and participate in that. It was super interesting and super fun to try to put things together in a way that would help sell better. So there was a vacancy, and I basically wrote to the principal I reported to and said, look, I really want to do this job. I know that I could be successful. Please try me for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to building a database. And he took a chance on me, and kind of the rest was history. I then went on to get my MBA at UNC Chapel Hill. So I left the workforce for the full 2 years and did that. I did a little consulting and waitress to make money during that period, but focused primarily on marketing and wanted to leave the world of B2B and get into B2C marketing.
Wow. And I love that you took that, that's a change where, you went from this solid career, which was successful, and then you went to having to waitress and go back to school and do what you needed to do to get to the point where you wanted to be. And that right there is a huge risk that a lot of people don't necessarily take, but obviously it was the smart choice for you and it paid off. What do you say to someone today comes to you, and they could be at any age, any level, they could be the most successful person, but this isn't where they want to be, or they're just starting out, and what did you need to get to that point? What made it work for you?
I think I had to have, support of friends and family. So that's, important to kind of feeling like you have a solid foundation, no matter what, the world's not going to crumble around you. I think at least that's the way I would describe it. I had to have enough confidence to know that I could be successful doing something else, that I had already been successful in a number of different ways in my, lifetime at that point. I guess, there's an element of just kind of guts and luck. Like the principal that I wrote that letter to saying, I know I can do that marketing job. He took a risk on me. And so I got a little lucky there, right? And when I applied to business school, I'm sure there's some luck in getting accepted to a top 20 business school. Then in, having colleagues that both support and challenge you while you're in business school, it was relatively challenging, I would say. I don't know what business school is like now. I graduated from business school in 2003. It feels like eons ago. This was before social media played such a large point in our lives. But I went with the intention of becoming a brand marketer, CPG marketer, working on big TV ads, which I was lucky enough to intern and then land a full-time job with what was then Sara Lee Intimates. And 3 years after working there, they had spun off and become Hanes Brands. So I worked on Playtex Intimates as like an assistant brand manager after my MBA, actually during my internship between my first and second year, and then they hired me full-time after. And really loved it. Like, it was fabulous. You're working on product, you're concepting. I was working on bras, so that was super fun. I worked on average figure, full figured, hanging and box, and all of the sub brands within Playtex, and was having a real ball. And then the only reason I got into e-commerce was because I wanted a promotion and there wasn't any happening on the brand side. And a friend had said, oh, there's an opening in the DTC side on e-commerce. And I kind of poo-pooed it. And I was like, oh, I'm doing so well here with Playtex. I'm not sure I want to depart from this type of career. And I guess, the lesson there is like, don't say no to something that you're, early on that you're not sure about, just try to learn more about it. So I had applied for the e-commerce role. It was a promotion from assistant manager to manager that I wanted so badly that just there was no upward mobility on the Playtex brand side. And I interviewed apparently against like 200 people and won the role. Wow. And I say luck here too, and a little bit of smarts, because I knew enough to do the research and see how much the industry was projecting e-commerce to grow. And knowing that if I got into this world of e-commerce early, there would always be demand for my skill set. Yeah. So there was a little bit of forward thinking, but there also was a little bit of luck. Like, I won the job. Sure, my qualifications played into that. My reputation internally, because it was the same company, played into that. And I'm sure how I interviewed played into that. But then when I got into that role, learning something completely different again, I was lucky in that the analytical and the creative side of e-commerce really worked for my brain. So the pieces that I wanted so badly when I was an interior design student, where I wanted to pick the color of the couch, but I wanted it to be based on something under the sun, right? So now I finally have this career where I can make decisions that do make people's lives more awesome and do sell things and grow businesses, but there is some data that exists that I can hang my hat on. Versus interior design, which just felt completely arbitrary to me. And sure, I could pick a trendy color as well as the next person, but so what? How was I helping the world or anyone's lives or a business in that way?
Well, it sounds like, obviously this is bringing your two worlds or your world in your brain together, but you must have said luck 3 or 4 times. I don't like that, because I think especially you hear it a lot, like, oh, you're so lucky, or oh, you're this. You made these choices. You took these chances. You went forward. The man that you approached for that job. He obviously saw something in you. That's not luck. That's you being success. You doing well. You being this person he can trust. The same with you going on that interview out of 200 people. Yeah, but how you came across, how you interviewed. Sometimes people who the way they interview, that's what gets them a job, because people see something in them. That's not luck. That's who you are.
Yeah, and maybe luck is a little bit of a cop-out, and I'm trying to be humble and not sound too braggadocious, and just
but own it.
Full of myself. But I've always been somebody who takes my work seriously and works very hard. It's a lot easier for me to work hard than it is for me to party and socialize. Not to say that I don't do that and I don't, enjoy that, or that I'm awkward or anything like that. But, in terms of enjoying my time, I really do like to work hard and delve into things and understand them, and be able to service my bosses and the organization as a whole, etc. So there is a level of hard work ethic, determination, persistence, that kind of magic stew that is part of my own internal persona, which has played into my entire history and has, for sure allowed me to be successful in these various careers, I guess, that I've had.
Yeah, and I'm not to say that there's never luck involved in terms of, why does one, actor make it, or why does one person get this position and not the other? But then it's what you do with it. So it's not to say that luck never plays out, or just the right timing or the right spot or whatever it may be. But if you're not that person to do it like you are, and to present yourself the way you do, and then to take that new, like you learned when you took the e-com, you hadn't done that, but obviously you learned what you needed to do and excelled, and then continued with it. So I think it's a combination of, go for those things that don't necessarily fit in your wheelhouse, but just do the research, do the work to make it so it works for you. And obviously you've been doing that throughout your career.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you can make your own luck. Like when I looked into e-commerce early on and was considering going from brand marketing to e-commerce, the research was out there saying the projected growth, and I knew it wasn't going to be wildly off. Like, different publications all saying roughly the same thing, that this would be an expanding marketplace, just means more opportunities. So I was making my own luck in choosing something that was going to be growing and that there would be sustained demand for when I would be at the peak of my career and in working years, professional life.
Definitely. Well, I want to get a little bit into, as you said, you do have the fun side. You do like to enjoy it out. Okay, so let's get into that. What is your passion? What's something, I know you're passionate about your work, and I know all that, but work's off the table.
Yeah.
What is it that you find? What's your guilty pleasure?
I like to ride horses. I like horses very much.
Really? Do you go in the city? I know you're in New York. Do you go? I always used to see the barn, I don't know if it's still there with the horses and.
Yeah, no, that was Claremont Academy, and they closed. I think it was early 2000s they closed. That was the oldest continuously operated stable in New York City. I taught there in 99, really? 2001, and I would be one of those people like taking people to the park, on the tours and stuff. So that's why I know something about it. But that doesn't exist anymore. So I drive up to Westchester these days to kind of get my fix, and I try to do that as much as I can.
That's awesome. So what got you started in riding horses?
I was just one of those horse crazy kids, like galloping in the backyard. And, my parents were wonderful enough to send me to horse camp one summer for a week. And, you rode, but you also cleaned tack and muck stalls and stuff like that. And I just loved every bit of it. I would take my dirty clothes that smelled like horse and smelled like barn, and I wouldn't let my mom wash them because I thought they smelled great. And so she'd have to tear them out of my hands to get them in the laundry. My father had his own business and was successful. And so we owned some horses, and I competed. And now I don't own a horse. I don't compete. I do just go for fun and try to learn, more about the animals, learn more about how to ride, learn more about just good horsemanship. And so that's my guilty pleasure, as it were. That's what I really like to do for fun.
That's awesome. I love that your passion with the horses and the keeping the smell. It sounds like me with mine is dogs, and I love the smell of wet dogs. Like, people are always like, "Ooh," and I'm like, but to me, that's what a dog is. That's the only smell you can get from a dog. You know what I mean? So I love it.
Yes.
I totally get that, what you're saying.
Yes.
I want to ask you before, in terms of, obviously where your career now, where it's gotten to, but if you weren't, and there was a lot of roles and different paths you took, but if you couldn't be this marketer, what would you be?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I would, if I wasn't in my current role. I'm on MAC Cosmetics, which is one of the Estee Lauder beauty brands. If I wasn't at MAC, I would probably still have my own consulting company. I mean, that's kind of related because I'd still be in the work of marketing and e-commerce, which either shows I'm very committed or a glutton for punishment, but that's really what I would be doing. I really can't think of anything else. I can't.
Well, you could be back to your horse training days.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know that I would want to do that as a career. I think I can't really put into weird words, but I don't think I would want that as a career. I think I would be yearning to experience something else in the world if I did that.
Well, and sometimes it's nice to not, like, what that passion or guilty pleasure is. It's nice to have it on this, like, you need that escape from the work. So you don't want to necessarily have the two combined.
And as much as I love my career, like, work is still work, right? Like, I maintain that anything you do for 9 to 10 hours a day, you're not going to love, because you're doing it just so much of your waking hours that even if you do really love your career, at some point you're just going to not feel like doing it and be tired and not love work, and just work is work.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a good thing that I didn't do that to my horseback riding as well, because I still really enjoy every moment of it.
You want to still love the horses. Well, final question, just what's any major revelation recently? What's the biggest revelation? Again, let's keep it on the personal side. Anything that's come up in the past, year or two?
Personal revelation. This is not a revelation so much as it is something that I try to remember that helps me in working with people, because I can be very critical, and I'm really quick to see things. So it's very easy for me to, in my head, be critical of others and myself. So I try to remember that, like, no matter what, generally speaking, most everyone comes to work to try to do a very good job and to drive excellence across the board. So in those moments where you're watching things and they're not going the way that you want them to, or you think they should, I try to remember that and try to understand the perspectives that other folks are bringing to the table, because they're not going to be my perspective. And I think that gives me a level of kind of grace and empathy that just allows me to be a better human being at work, versus many thoughts that might be in my head at any given point in time that are best kept there.
You idiot, what are you saying?
Right. And I'm just as hard on myself too, which isn't healthy either. So it's a good balance of that inner dialogue.
Barometer, not only for give yourself a little kindness, not just your colleagues, not just your friends, but yourself as well.
Right. And it's for those moments when things just aren't going the way you want them to, or the way you think they should go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. Sometimes we all forget to sort of double check ourselves. So I think that's really something.
Yeah. And I almost say it's almost like stop the narrative of all of the noise that's happening in your head and just listen and pay attention, because there's a lot of inputs out here you're missing.
Yep.
And you're probably talking to yourself, and you probably don't have the complete picture.
That is true. Well, we'll end on that. Thank you, Amy, so much. This is
Well, thank you for reaching out. It was a pleasure. I'm glad to have the interest and to be able to tell a little bit about my story, and hope that it helps somebody out there.
Yeah, well, this definitely has helped people, and you helped me and helped with. I used some of your input.
Good.
Open, and it went over really well. So I have thank you for that as well.
Good.
And
Good.
thank you for watching. And as I always say, if you have know a woman marketer who you want to see me kind of pull back the curtains on, just let me know and I will do my best. Thank you. And thanks again, Amy.
Thank you.